The moment I walked into my grandmother's crowded backyard in Willow Creek, I knew something was wrong. The air felt heavy with whispers. Then my sister Danielle raised her champagne glass high above her head and cleared her throat. "Everyone, can I have your attention?" she called out loudly. The conversation stopped. All eyes turned toward her. "I just want to say how wonderful it is that we invited Naomi today," she announced with a fake smile. "I know the family felt sorry for her after all her failures, but we didn't want her to feel completely left out." Laughter rippled through the crowd of aunts, uncles, and cousins. My face burned with embarrassment. She continued talking about my failed career and how I had disappeared from town years ago with nothing to show for myself. Every word felt like a knife cutting deeper. I stood frozen near the dessert table, wanting to disappear. Just as I turned to leave, my phone started ringing loudly in my purse. The sound cut through Danielle's speech like an alarm. I grabbed my phone quickly, desperate for any excuse to escape the humiliation. The caller ID showed Mitchell and Associates Legal. I answered immediately and walked toward the side of the house. "Ms. Carter, this is Attorney Benjamin Mitchell," the professional voice said. "I apologize for calling during the weekend, but I need your urgent approval on a financial authorization." Behind me, Danielle's voice grew louder as she told another embarrassing story about me. I pressed the phone closer to my ear. "What kind of authorization?" I asked quietly. "A multimillion-dollar transfer for the quarterly bonuses at Carter Industries," he explained. "The board approved it yesterday, but company policy requires your personal signature before processing." I glanced back and saw Danielle watching me with a smirk. She raised her voice deliberately. "Naomi, is that a debt collector calling?" The relatives laughed again. I ignored her and focused on the lawyer's words about payment schedules and employee accounts. I tried to keep my voice down while the attorney explained the transaction details. "Yes, I approve the transfer," I confirmed, checking the amount on my phone screen. "Please process it immediately." When I mentioned Carter Industries by name, I noticed my cousin Eric suddenly paying attention from across the yard. He had been talking to my uncle but now stared at me curiously. I ended the call and walked back to the group. Eric approached me with a confused expression. "Did you just say Carter Industries?" he asked. Before I could answer, Danielle jumped into the conversation. She laughed and put her hand on Eric's shoulder. "That's my company," she said proudly. "I've worked there for 2 years in the marketing department. It's amazing." Eric looked between us. "Why would Naomi be talking to a lawyer about your company?" he asked. Danielle's smile widened as if she had just heard the funniest joke. "The CEO personally approves all major financial transactions," she explained confidently. Maybe Naomi was pretending to be important. Danielle saw my silence as confirmation of weakness. She turned to the gathered relatives and started telling stories I wished everyone would forget. "Remember when Naomi left town 7 years ago?" she asked the crowd. "She said she was going to start some big business venture. We all thought she would come back successful." She paused for dramatic effect. Instead, she just disappeared. No contact. No updates. Nothing. My aunt nodded sympathetically. "We worried about you, dear," she said to me. But Danielle wasn't finished. "Failed at business, failed at keeping in touch with family," she continued, counting on her fingers. "That's why we felt sorry enough to invite her today." The relatives laughed nervously. Some looked uncomfortable, but nobody defended me. I stood there taking it all in, feeling smaller with each word. Then my phone buzzed in my hand with a new notification. I glanced down at the screen, and my stomach tightened. The timing couldn't have been more perfect, or more ironic. The notification read, "Payroll processing complete. 847 employees paid successfully." Below it showed the total amount transferred and the date, June 15th. I stared at the numbers, knowing that Danielle herself was employee number 284 on that exact list. She noticed me looking at my phone and rolled her eyes dramatically. "Still pretending to be important?" she mocked, stepping closer. "What is it this time? A fake email from a CEO?" Several cousins chuckled. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, but something stopped me. Years of building my business had taught me patience. The truth always reveals itself eventually. I just hadn't expected it to happen this fast. Danielle reached for my phone playfully, trying to see the screen. I pulled it away gently. Just work stuff, I said quietly. Work, she repeated loudly. What work? Last I heard, you were living in some tiny apartment across the state. My uncle chimed in. Danielle, that's a bit harsh. But she ignored him, riding the wave of attention. Eric's curiosity seemed to grow stronger. He stepped between Danielle and me, asking her questions instead. How long have you worked at Carter Industries? He asked. 2 years, Danielle answered proudly. It's one of the best decisions I ever made. Eric nodded thoughtfully. What makes it so special? Danielle's eyes lit up. She loved talking about herself. 2 years ago, the company was struggling badly, she explained. Then this mysterious investor came in and bought the whole business. Within months, everything changed. New technology, better pay, expansion into 3 new states. Our relatives gathered closer, genuinely interested. The company went from almost bankrupt to making millions, Danielle continued. We got raises, bonuses, better benefits. It's been incredible. My grandmother asked the obvious question. Have you met this investor? Danielle shook her head. Nobody has. The CEO works remotely and keeps a very private profile. Most employees have never even seen a photograph. Eric glanced at me briefly, then back at Danielle. That's unusual, he commented. Eric leaned forward with growing interest. What's the CEO's name? He asked. Danielle nodded confidently. Of course. It's public record in the company documents. She paused, enjoying the attention. The business is run by someone named N. Carter. The backyard went strangely quiet for a moment. I watched as several relatives' eyes moved slowly between Danielle and me. Our last name hung in the air like a question nobody wanted to ask. My grandmother spoke first. Carter, she repeated. Like our family name. Eric's eyes widened slightly. I could see him doing the math in his head. Danielle noticed the sudden attention shift and laughed quickly. It's probably just a coincidence, she said, waving her hand dismissively. Carter is a common last name. Could be anyone. But her voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. She looked at me with narrowed eyes, as if seeing me for the first time today. You're not trying to claim you know my boss, are you? She asked mockingly. Danielle forced another laugh, but it sounded hollow now. Seriously, Naomi, she said, crossing her arms. Don't even think about making up some story about being related to my CEO. The relatives shifted uncomfortably. My uncle tried to change the subject by offering more food, but nobody moved toward the tables. I'm sure it's just a distant relative or some investor who happens to share our name, Danielle insisted, speaking faster. The Carter family is huge. She turned back to our cousins, trying to regain control of the conversation. Besides, you all know Naomi left town with nothing. How could she possibly be connected to a multimillion-dollar company? She was trying to convince herself as much as everyone else. I stayed silent, watching her scramble. Before anyone could respond, my phone rang again. The sound made several people jump. I looked at the screen. Office, Amanda calling. My assistant. I knew I should ignore it, but something made me answer. This is Naomi, I said, walking a few steps away. Behind me, I heard Danielle whisper loudly to Eric, probably another fake call. Amanda's voice came through clearly. Ms. Carter, I'm so sorry to bother you on Saturday, she said quickly. But the investor meeting is starting in 30 minutes. They're asking if you'll join by video call. I glanced back at the reunion. Everyone was watching me now. Can it wait until Monday? I asked. They specifically requested your presence for the board approval discussion, Amanda explained. The quarterly reports and the expansion budget. I heard phrases like board approval and company finances drift across the yard. Danielle had moved closer, trying to listen. For the first time, I saw uncertainty flash across her face. I'll call in at 4 o'clock, I told Amanda. Please send the meeting link to my phone. Already done, she confirmed. Thank you, Ms. Carter. I ended the call and turned back to find Danielle staring at me with a strange expression. Her confidence had definitely cracked. She opened her mouth to say something, but her own phone dinged loudly with a notification. She pulled it out immediately, eager for a distraction. Danielle's face transformed as she read her phone screen. The uncertainty vanished, replaced by excitement. "Oh my God!" she exclaimed, waving her phone. "Everyone, look at this." She practically bounced with enthusiasm. The relatives gathered around her again. "I just got a company email," she announced. "The CEO is giving everyone surprise bonuses this month." Cheers erupted from the family members. Danielle beamed with pride. "This is exactly what I was talking about," she said, looking directly at me. "My boss is incredibly generous. Look at how much we're getting." She showed her phone to my grandmother, who read the amount and gasped. "That's wonderful, dear," grandmother said. Danielle scrolled through the email, reading parts aloud. "It says the bonuses are in appreciation for our hard work during the company expansion." She continued reading about the payment schedule and the reasons behind the decision. Her voice grew louder with each sentence, clearly showing off. Then Eric asked a simple question that changed everything. "Who signed the email?" Danielle scrolled to the bottom of the email without hesitation. "Let me see," she said confidently. "It's always signed by the CEO." She squinted at her screen, and I watched her face carefully. Eric moved closer to look over her shoulder. "Read the name out loud," he encouraged. Danielle started reading, but her voice began to falter halfway through. "It says, approved and authorized by." She stopped. Her eyes widened. She read it again silently. The color drained from her face. "What does it say?" my grandmother asked impatiently. Danielle's hand holding the phone started to shake slightly. She looked up at me with an expression I had never seen before, complete shock mixed with disbelief. "The signature," she whispered, then cleared her throat. "The signature reads, Naomi Carter, Chief Executive Officer." The entire backyard went absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the grass. Every single person slowly turned their head to look at me. Even the birds seemed to stop chirping. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Danielle just stood there frozen, staring at her phone screen like it might change if she looked long enough. My uncle finally broke the silence. "That can't be right," he said weakly. But Eric was already pulling out his own phone. "Let me check something," he muttered, typing rapidly. Danielle looked at me with wide eyes, her earlier smugness completely gone. "This has to be a mistake," she said, though her voice barely rose above a whisper. "There must be another Naomi Carter. It's a coincidence." My aunt touched Danielle's arm gently. "Honey, you said the CEO's name was N. Carter," she reminded her. "And you said nobody's ever seen them in person." The pieces were falling into place for everyone. My grandmother sat down heavily in her lawn chair. "Naomi," she asked me directly, "is this true?" All eyes turned to me, waiting. I could feel my heart beating faster. This wasn't how I had planned to reveal anything. But Danielle had forced my hand with her cruelty. I pulled out my own phone slowly, letting the moment stretch. I opened my email and navigated to the same company memo. Then I turned my screen around so everyone could see. The header showed Carter Industries Internal Communications. The signature at the bottom matched Danielle's email exactly. My full name and title. Whispers exploded through the gathering. "I don't understand," my aunt said, looking confused. "How is this possible?" Eric showed his phone to the group. "I just searched the corporate records," he announced. Carter Industries was purchased 2 years ago by a private investor named Naomi A. Carter. The company has grown 340% since then. Danielle grabbed his phone and read the screen herself. Her hands shook. "But, you left town with nothing," she said to me, her voice breaking. "You failed. Everyone said you failed." I met her eyes calmly. I left town to start over, I corrected gently. That's different from failing. The truth was settling over the reunion like a heavy blanket. My relatives pressed closer, bombarding me with questions. How did this happen? When did you buy the company? Why didn't you tell us? I took a deep breath, organizing 7 years of my life into a simple explanation. After I left Willow Creek, I moved to Seattle, I began. I started a small tech company from my apartment, just me and my laptop. Several cousins exchanged glances. The company created software for small businesses, I continued. It was supposed to stay small. But somehow it took off. Within 3 years, we had clients across the country. My uncle interrupted. And you sold it? I nodded. A larger corporation made an offer I couldn't refuse. I used that money to invest in struggling businesses. Danielle's face had gone pale. Carter Industries was one of them, I explained. It was failing badly, but I saw potential. I bought it, restructured everything, brought in new management. My grandmother wiped her eyes. You've been running Danielle's company this whole time? She asked softly. Yes, I confirmed. For exactly 2 years and 3 months. I watched Danielle carefully as the realization hit her. Every paycheck, every bonus, every benefit, every raise she had received for 2 years, all of it had come from me. The sister she had just humiliated in front of the entire family. Her legs seemed to wobble. She sat down heavily on the nearest chair. You've been paying my salary, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. All this time. Eric put his hand on her shoulder, but she barely noticed. I could see her mind racing, replaying every cruel comment she had made in the past hour. I didn't know, she said weakly. But that excuse sounded hollow even to her. She hadn't known because she had never asked. She had never bothered to check. She had been too busy celebrating her success while mocking my supposed failure. My cousin Ashley spoke up. Danielle, you said some pretty harsh things earlier. The other relatives nodded, looking uncomfortable. Danielle's eyes filled with tears. Not from sadness, I realized. From fear. Fear of what this meant for her job, her reputation, her future. Part of me felt sorry for her. But a larger part remembered every cruel word from the past hour. Danielle stood up abruptly, her pride making one last attempt to protect her. I don't believe it, she said loudly. This could all be fake. Photoshopped emails. Borrowed phones. She looked around desperately for support. Naomi could be making this whole thing up. Eric sighed and held up his phone again. Danielle, I'm literally looking at public corporate records right now, he said patiently. The Secretary of State website. Business registration documents. Tax filings. He scrolled through page after page. Naomi and Carter is listed as the majority owner and chief executive officer of Carter Industries, incorporated 2 years ago after acquisition from the previous owners. He turned the screen toward her. These are official government records. You can verify them yourself. Danielle grabbed his phone with shaking hands. She scrolled through the documents, her face growing more desperate with each page. There are even news articles, Eric added, pulling up his browser. Look, mystery tech entrepreneur saves failing manufacturing company. That was published 18 months ago. Danielle read the article, which mentioned my name, though no photos were included. Her last defense crumbled completely. The relatives who had laughed at Danielle's jokes earlier now looked embarrassed. My aunt approached me first. Naomi, I'm so sorry, she said, touching my arm. We shouldn't have believed those stories about you failing. Others started apologizing too. We should have reached out over the years. We should have supported you. We had no idea you were doing so well. My uncle cleared his throat awkwardly. You've accomplished incredible things, he said. We're proud of you. But I noticed most of them were looking at me differently now. Not with love or family warmth, but with interest. The kind of interest people show when they realize someone has money and influence. Danielle remained silent, sitting in her chair with her head down. My grandmother walked over to me and hugged me tightly. I knew you were special, she whispered. I always knew. That felt genuine. But the others kept asking questions about my business, my investments, my plans for the future. Their sudden attention felt hollow after years of silence. Danielle finally stood up and walked toward me. Her earlier confidence had completely shattered. Naomi, she began, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a choke. I was just joking earlier. You know that, right? She touched my arm lightly. Sisters tease each other. It didn't mean anything. I looked at her calmly but said nothing. She continued, speaking faster. I mean, we're family. Family jokes around. That's normal. The other relatives watched our exchange silently. Nobody was smiling anymore. You're not actually upset, are you? Danielle asked, her voice rising slightly. Because I was just having fun. Everyone was laughing. My cousin Ashley shook her head. Danielle, that wasn't teasing, she said quietly. That was cruel. Several others murmured agreement. The tension in the backyard was thick. Danielle's eyes darted around, looking for someone to support her, but everyone avoided her gaze. I didn't mean it, she said, turning back to me. Her voice cracked. I swear I didn't mean any of it. But we both knew that was a lie. I took a deep breath and decided to tell them the real reason I had come today. I didn't plan for any of this to happen, I said to the gathered family. When I received the reunion invitation 3 weeks ago, I was actually excited. Danielle looked up with confusion. I came here today planning to surprise everyone, I continued. I wanted to share my success with the family. Maybe offer some opportunities to relatives who needed them. My grandmother's eyes widened. I've been considering expanding Carter Industries into this region, I explained. I was going to discuss it with Danielle specifically. Danielle's face went from pale to completely white. I've been reviewing employee performance records, I said, looking directly at her. Your work has been excellent. Your marketing campaigns increased sales by 23% last quarter. I paused. I was actually planning to offer you a promotion to Regional Marketing Director. It comes with a significant raise and leadership responsibilities. The backyard went silent again. Danielle's hands covered her mouth. Was? She whispered. I nodded slowly. Was? I watched Danielle's face as the weight of her actions crashed down on her. She had spent the last hour destroying an opportunity she didn't even know existed. You were going to promote me? She asked, her voice barely audible. Before today, yes, I answered honestly. I thought it would be a nice surprise. Family helping family. Tears started rolling down Danielle's cheeks. Not the fake tears she sometimes used to get attention, but real ones. She understood what her cruelty had cost her. How much? She started, then stopped. What was the salary? Eric asked quietly. I considered not answering, but transparency felt important. The position pays $180,000 annually, plus bonuses and stock options. Danielle made a choking sound. Her current salary was $62,000. The relatives gasped at the number. My uncle whistled low. That's more than 3 times what you make now, Ashley said to Danielle. Danielle collapsed back into her chair, her whole body shaking. She had gambled her future on a moment of cruel entertainment, and she had lost spectacularly. The promotion. The respect. Everything. My relatives slowly turned their attention to Danielle. The mood had shifted completely. How could you be so cruel to your own sister? My aunt demanded. Naomi came here to help you, and you humiliated her. My uncle shook his head in disappointment. All those stories you told about Naomi failing, were any of them even true? Danielle couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Eric spoke up. You've been spreading rumors about Naomi for years. At every family gathering. Every holiday. He looked angry. You made us all believe she had abandoned us. My grandmother's voice cut through the accusations. Danielle, I'm ashamed of you. Those words seemed to hurt Danielle more than anything else. Several cousins who had laughed earlier now apologized to me again, distancing themselves from Danielle. We didn't know the truth, they insisted. I watched my sister sitting alone as the family that had supported her mockery just minutes ago now turned against her. It was almost too easy. Too complete. But I felt no satisfaction in her pain. I raised my hand to stop the relatives' attacks on Danielle. Everyone, please, I said calmly. The backyard quieted. I walked closer to where Danielle sat slumped in her chair. I didn't come here for revenge, I said clearly. And I don't want to watch my sister be torn apart by our family. Danielle looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Success isn't about making other people feel small, I continued, speaking to everyone. It's not about proving yourself better than someone else. I looked around at the gathered relatives. When people tried to humiliate me earlier, I could have stopped it immediately. I could have revealed everything and made Danielle look foolish. Several people nodded. But that would make me exactly like the people who hurt me, I said. Success means rising above the need for revenge. It means being better than the worst treatment you've received. My grandmother smiled at me through her own tears. That's wisdom, sweetheart, she said softly. I turned back to Danielle. I won't humiliate you the way you tried to humiliate me. The relief on her face was visible. Danielle stood up slowly, wiping her eyes. The question hung in the air before she finally asked it. Am I going to lose my job? Her voice shook with genuine fear. The relatives leaned in, waiting for my answer. I could feel the weight of the moment. With one word, I could destroy everything she had built. With one decision, I could prove I was better, or worse, than her cruelty. No, I said firmly. You're not going to be fired. Danielle's legs nearly gave out with relief. Your job is safe, I continued. You're good at what you do. The company needs people with your skills and experience. But I held up my hand before she could thank me. However, I added, things will change between us. Danielle nodded quickly, willing to agree to anything. In my company, promotions aren't just about performance numbers, I explained. They're about character, leadership, and how you treat others, especially those you think have less power than you. I let that sink in. You have excellent marketing skills, Danielle. But you still have a lot to learn about respect, humility, and professionalism. I looked at my sister with complete honesty. The promotion I was going to offer you. I said, it's gone. Not as punishment, but because you're not ready for it yet. Danielle nodded, accepting this. Leadership positions require someone who lifts others up, not tears them down, I explained. Someone who respects every employee regardless of their title or status. My cousin Eric nodded in agreement. If you want to grow in the company, you'll need to grow as a person first, I told her. That means examining why you felt the need to humiliate me today. It means understanding the impact of your words and actions. Danielle wiped her eyes again. I understand, she whispered. Your job is secure, your salary remains the same, and your current position hasn't changed, I confirmed. But future opportunities will depend entirely on the person you choose to become from this moment forward. The relatives watched this exchange in silence. I'm not your enemy, Danielle, I said gently. But I'm also not going to reward cruelty with promotions. In business or in family. As the afternoon sun began to set over my grandmother's backyard, the reunion slowly resumed. But everything had changed. Relatives approached me with genuine curiosity about my life, my business, and my journey. Not because of what I could do for them, but because they finally saw me clearly. Danielle stayed quiet for the rest of the gathering, processing everything that had happened. Before I left, she pulled me aside. Thank you for not firing me, she said quietly. And I'm sorry. Really sorry. I nodded. Sorry is a start. But actions matter more than words. She understood. As I drove away from Willow Creek that evening, I realized something important. The best response to humiliation isn't revenge or cruelty. It's quiet success. It's building a life so full of purpose that small minds can't diminish it. My family would remember this day for a very long time. And Danielle would have to decide whether she wanted to learn from this lesson or remain the person who once tried to laugh at my failure. Either way, I had already won, not by destroying her, but by refusing to become like her.